mean, when I woke up, I knew I was in Tokyo. Like I remembered, the last thing I remembered was being at the Olympics. So I kind of deductive reasoning figured out that I must have crashed during the Olympics. But yeah, I turned my phone on. I have like hundreds of messages, hundreds of emails, hundreds of, my phone's blown up. And the first thing you see if you open anything is pictures and videos of the crash. So I'm trying to piece it together to see what happened. And yeah.
Welcome to Old Guy Talks to Me, a podcast dedicated to helping guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. Ladies, if you want to know what your guy is thinking, this podcast is for women too. Each week, a special guest helps you create that life you've imagined. We talk anti-aging medicine, personal growth, relationships and hot sex. Yeah, you hear me, getting laid more frequently. Other guy vices, and topics that many don't want to talk about but need to. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you have to be old. Don't want to miss anything? Be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to go to www.thestandard.academy/magazine and grab a free copy of our new digital magazine, The Standard Academy, where we talk about erogenous zones, growing hair back, and other things that will help you create that kick-ass life. Now get ready to listen up and share with friends.
This is Orsi, official old guy at oldguytalkstome.com, a podcast dedicated to helping older guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love, folks. And sometimes part of that is actually watching things and watching sporting events, which old guys do. And as you get older, you tend to watch more than to participate. But that's something that actually, folks, if you haven't catch my my podcast about fear of becoming decrepit, it has to do with a little commercial. I wasn't planning on going in a commercial for myself here, Connor, but I had an ostomy and it just got reversed a few weeks ago. And it was a very emotionally, intellectually, and physically challenging experience. But we're here to talk about Connor. And Connor is a BMX Gold medalist, and he's going to open the doors to a rarely seen experience of what it takes to win sport's greatest prize and overcome adversity. While he won gold in 2016 in Rio, his 2021 crash in Tokyo is on record as the worst Summer Olympics injury in 2 decades. And despite this near-death experience and disappointment, Connor is now on a journey of recovery and self-discovery that he openly shares. And we're going to get some behind-the-scenes stuff. And, it goes part of your bio, part of the bio that you sent to me, goes from choking at the 2012 Olympics to winning the gold in 2016. What changed? Connor was the first American to win an Olympic BMX gold. And during the semifinals of the postponed Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympics, Connor crashed with a fellow racer and suffered brain shearing and bleeding, a broken rib, a collapsed lung, and needed intubation to breathe. His competitive nature helped him confront months of recovery and therapy, after which Connor chose not to return to competitive sports. He is now a much sought after motivational speaker. And there's going to be a link to where you can get in contact with Connor in the program notes, but basically connorfields.com is the website. So Connor, welcome. Welcome to Old Guy Talks to Me.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So Connor, I always start with this question for all my guests. What is the most important thing you've done today?
To be honest, I haven't had a very busy day today. So for me, the most important thing I did was work out. And for me, that's one of the most important things I think you could do any day is exercise and stay physically healthy.
Yeah, I think so too. I think working out every day is key. And if you work out every day, then you tend not to skip or incredibly rarely skip working out if it becomes a habit in your life. Connor, at what age did you start racing BMX? And when did you decide to do it exclusively?
My parents found a flyer at a local bike shop advertising the BMX track that was nearby to my house when I was 7 years old. And so when I was 7, we went out and I watched it. And then the next week I went out and tried it and I loved it. And I continued to play other sports until I was about 11, I think. And then at that point, it was getting to where I would have soccer practice, but I would actually rather go do the race, or I would have t-ball or baseball practice and leave halfway through because I had to make it to the race. And it just got to the point where like, well, if you're going to do this BMX thing and you want to do it as much as you want to do it, we can't have you doing other stuff too, because it's not fair to the other members of the team.
Mm-hmm. So you got started. And why, so you started racing at a very young age, and were obviously your parents were supportive. What a big role did they play in your career?
Yeah, my parents were definitely supportive. I'm very lucky, and I think back, my parents, they didn't care if I got first place or fifth place or 10th place. They didn't care, how I was riding. They just wanted me to be working hard, trying my best, being a good sport, kind of the more foundational, fundamental sides of sports, as opposed to the X's and O's. And they really allowed me to develop the will to win and the competitiveness. And they just gave me the opportunity. And the opportunity that they gave me was, hey, we'll take you to the races this weekend if you go to practice every day this week, or we will take you to this event, but you have to promise that you're going to do your absolute best at that event, no matter what happens. And it was kind of a good trade-off where they allowed me to develop and grow, but didn't put the pressure on me and allowed me to put that kind of pressure on myself.
Yeah. When did you decide that this was like something that you were seriously going to pursue? Because, a lot of people play sports and like, they're not really as dedicated.
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily a decision that I woke up one morning and made, the same way that I could make a decision now at 30 that I want to do something and go after something. When you're 12 or 13, you're not waking up saying, I'm going to seriously pursue this, right? It was more that I loved it. I was ultra competitive and I wanted to be the best at it. And I couldn't imagine doing anything else. It was all consuming. It consumed my thoughts. It consumed my my days. It was all I wanted to do. So it was probably around age 14 to 15 that it, you could say that I went after it 100%, but it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just, I wanted to win the next race. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get a sponsor. I wanted to be a professional. It wasn't a woke up one morning type thing and decided this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So there comes a point when, and you mentioned that you did something in your parents' garage. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. We had a little bit of a workout area set up. I had a little rack with some weights and some stuff that I would work out with. My dad would work out too. And it was 2008, and I watched the first BMX race that happened at the Olympics was 2008. And I watched the Olympics, and I thought it was just the absolute coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I really wanted to do it. And so I was all fired up the next day when I was training in the garage, and I wrote on the wall that one day I'll become Olympic champion. Mm-hmm. So every time I was doing squats, I would have to look at it. And my parents weren't thrilled. But they let it sit there on the wall, and I think I'm talking to them now, they were just happy that I had something that was positive and healthy and motivating to focus on, instead of all the other traps that 15-year-olds can fall into, whether it's drugs or alcohol or anything like that. So, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, Connor, when people, when see people, so let's say a world champion such as yourself, and they say, in whatever area, or maybe someone who's ever like world class in anything, and they only see the highlight reels, so tell us about the amount of work that you had to put in to get to the point where you were, could even make the Olympic trials, let alone compete successfully at them, and then let alone win a gold.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's something that, unless you are actively in it or know somebody who is in that, and what I mean is the high level sport, elite level sport, Major League Baseball, the National Football League, an Olympic sport, anything where you are at the absolute pinnacle. Unless you know somebody who's involved in that, it's hard to grasp and understand the amount of work that it takes to go into it. And not just we're going to work out for a couple hours every day. I mean, it's in every single minute of every single day, all consuming thing. It's how well you're sleeping. It's your nutrition and what you're eating. It's your physical training, your strength, your conditioning. It's your technical skills practice. It's your sports psychologist who's working to refine the mental game. It's, having a team of people around you to hold you accountable. It's your coaches. It's your managers, your agents. I mean, there's so much that goes into it where it's an all day, everyday thing. But yeah, I guess me speaking personally, I was really highly dedicated at such a young age. And I was also trying to be a kid at the same time. So I was trying to be a 16-year-old kid, study for my driver's test and go to homecoming dance. And then at the same time, try to be a professional athlete. So there was a lot of times where I would leave something early to go to practice, or I would go to the gym and go straight from the gym to the Friday night football game or whatever it was. And it was just always trying to do what it took to be, a great BMX racer. But then also be a kid at the same time and kind of enjoy that time of my life.
Yeah. Were there things that you had to give up?
Oh yeah. I mean, the list, even, through your entire career, the list of things that you have to give up. I mean, sounds silly, but dessert. I mean, for most people, it's so easy. It's like, oh yeah, I'll just have dinner and then have dessert every night, or have a beer, or, whatever that is. And for us, it's like every single decision that you make is calculated. It's thought out. It's, I'm going to have dessert on Saturdays. It's, I'm only going to have a beer after the event, whatever it is. So that's an everyday sacrifice. And then on top of that, it's first and foremost, it's the amount of time that you're putting into this. It comes at the expense of other things, whether it's hanging out with friends, dating, pursuing other activities and interests. It's an all-encompassing thing to where it's your whole life revolves around one thing and one thing only. So if it doesn't, the way I looked at it is, if it didn't make me a better BMX racer, I wasn't going to do it. And even if I wanted to, of course I wanted to go hang out with my buddies on a Friday night when we're 22 years old, and we're going to all you can eat sushi and then going to the bars. Like, that sounds fun, but I've got practice at 9 a.m. So I'm going to go to bed, so it's just every single day there's stuff.
Yeah. Outside of riding bike, what other types of physical training did you do? You mentioned doing weights and things like that. What else?
Yeah. So for us, there's the technical practice, which is the riding. Then there's the strength and conditioning. So it was lifting in the gym 2 to 3 times a week. It was conditioning. So whether that's done on a stationary bike, on a rower, on a road bike, different types of conditioning. And then it was lots of things like start practice, where you would just pedal as fast as you could for a set distance. I would basically train 6 days a week in some combination of technical work, skills work, conditioning, strength, or start practice.
Yeah. So you mentioned this, and I want to delve a little bit more deeper into this. You talked about mental training and working with sports psychologists. How big of a factor is that in terms of becoming an elite athlete?
It's different for different athletes, right? There's some athletes that might not need it and be completely fine without it. And there's other athletes where it can make or break their career. I think it just comes down to the individual. For me, I'm a thinker. I'm analytical. My brain is very active. I'm not good at just shutting it off and going. So I had to learn techniques and ways to have my mind working for me instead of against me, and to think about things that are going to help me instead of thinking about things that aren't going to help me or going to hurt me. So for me, it was massive. And it's something I'm very glad that I started at a young age, because it set foundations for success that I was able to reach later on. But I think it's changed a little bit in modern times, but I think it's this taboo thing where, if you have a sports psychologist, you're weak. And most of the time, if you're a successful elite athlete, you have at least an element of being, for lack of a better word, macho in you. Like you kind of have that mindset. I don't need it. I'll just practice harder. I'll just try harder. I'll just train harder. But sometimes what you don't want to do or what you don't think you need is actually what you need most.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was definitely very helpful.
Yeah, did you do any visualizations and things like that with you?
Yeah. Oh, tons of it. Yeah, tons of visualization. And then certain stuff was specifically talked about and worked on. And then, I had kind of figured out my mental process and routine that I would go through on race day and how I incorporated visualization into that, both before the event began and then throughout the event. And big believer in visualization as well as manifestation, like with the writing on the wall.
Yeah. I suspect do you do any, or have you done any meditation?
Yeah, I have. For me, meditation comes in a lot of different forms. A lot of people think meditation is only that you're sitting here going, But for me, I actually found competing to be a form of meditation because I was just 100% present and focused and not thinking about anything else and focused on my breath and focused on what I was feeling and what I was experiencing and or like mindfulness where, maybe you're going for a walk and just being mindful. There's different types of meditation. I'm not good at the sitting down going, meditation, but I always try to find other ways to kind of be present.
Okay. How long in terms of time and distance is a typical BMX race?
Part of what makes it fun is that every course is different. So everywhere you go is going to be different, but usually going to be between 300 to 500 meters and anywhere from about 30 to 45 seconds is a course.
Wow. That's
a sprint.
It's a sprint. That's a lot of ground to cover in a short amount of time like that.
Yeah. From a training perspective, we train most similarly to a 200 or 400 meter run.
Okay. Yeah. So you'd be more in the sprint thing. Tell us a bit, because most people will never be in this situation. What is it like to be sitting there at the starting line and at the race and racing, and then at the end? And then my other question is there any trash talking or mad dogging that goes on in BMX?
Back in the day, there was, like in the 70s and the 80s, there was for sure. As bikes and technology got better, as athletes became more athletic. I mean, in the 70s, just like in all sports, people were smoking cigarettes between races, right? Same like at halftime at football games in the 70s, they were smoking cigarettes. So as training and technology and everything got better, the level began to raise. And as the level raised, the level of focus needed was raised, because this is a very dangerous and risky thing that we're doing. A misjudgment and miscalculation, if you're not focused, it can lead to a mistake leading to a crash and injury. So as things kind of got better, people started just minding their own business because they just didn't want to distract themselves by trying to talk trash to others. So that kind of died off probably early 90s, I would say, is when the trash talk kind of died off. You still get occasional trash talk, but it's more after something happens than before something happens. Like if somebody does a move that somebody else wasn't a fan of, they'll talk some trash for a little while there. But typically not beforehand. And then to answer your question on before the race, I mean, it's just ultimate focus, ultimate concentration. I mean, you've been preparing for so long for an event, and then you have 35, 40 seconds to, let, whether it's 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, or 2 decades of work kind of show in that period of time, which is a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I would imagine. So when you're there and you're totally focused at the race, what goes through your mind, or are you in a different place mentally when you're in the race actually, or you're in a zone, or what would you call your mental state during the race?
During the race, you're just totally focused and in zone, and so much is happening that you can't think about other things. Like I can't think about what I want for dinner because I'm going physically as hard and as fast as I possibly can. So I don't know if if anybody has ever run as fast as they possibly can, like you don't have the energy or the ability to start thinking about, what you want for lunch while you're doing that. Add in the fact that there's other racers out there you're having to account for, jumps you're having to go over, trying to figure out, is the wind blowing? Which way is it blowing? Where should my balance point be? Should I lean forward? Should I lean back? How's my traction on the tires connecting to the dirt? I mean, there's so much going on that you're just totally focused and instinctive because you don't have the time to really think through your decisions. It's just react, and it's just instinctive. So, if you feel something, you've got no choice but to kind of decide what you want to do about what you're feeling right then and there. So it's not, you're just focused, completely just locked in.
Do you need accountability? Are you looking to change the course of your life but have failed to keep on track? Too often we take in information and fail to act. Do you need an accountability program to stay the course? Then go to www.thestandard.academy and find out about my accountability program that goes with my course that helps you find out what you want, why you want it, and how to get it. The accountability program keeps you on track to get results.
So BMX has not been an Olympic sport for very long, I gather.
No, 2008 was the first one.
And you are the first American to have won BMX.
Yep.
And it's kind of, BMX was kind of born in the States. And that is, I find it a little bit surprising that especially at the very beginning, that, the Americans weren't winning it.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of total number of medals, the United States still has more medals than any other country. We won 3 medals in 2008, a silver and a silver in the men's and a bronze in both the men's and the women's. And then in 2016, we won a silver in the women's and a gold in the men's with myself. So we still have 5 medals, out of the total possible available medals at the games, which is still the number one in terms of countries and medals, but only 1 gold. To be honest, there's really not that many countries who have won gold. In the men's, Latvia won the first 2, I won 1, and then a Dutch rider won the 4th one. So there's only 3 of us. And then in the women's, a French woman won the first one, a Colombian won 2, and then a British woman won the 3rd. So there's only 6 countries who have ever even won a gold medal.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about London in the 2012 Olympics. You were a favorite in that. And so what happened in that race?
I just got ahead of myself. A common mistake made, especially by younger athletes, is they think too much about the result and not enough about the process to get the result. To put it in basketball terms, you're thinking about the shot going in before you've even set up, jumped, extended, followed through. Like there's so many steps that go into putting the ball in the basket. So for me, I was thinking about winning and where the party was going to be and what I wanted to do, instead of just focusing on the individual steps that it was going to take to get there, executing my start, having a good drive, keeping my head down, hitting my marks, rounding the corners, different things like that. Easy thing to look back and just be like, yeah, that's what I did wrong. But when you're in that moment, it's hard to walk it back and remind yourself to focus on the process.
Yeah, in a race like that, in a short with so much little time, there's not much time for recovery, I imagine, from a mistake.
You can no, but it depends on the mistake. If the mistake is made farther along in the track and you're already in a good position, it can be easier. But if you make a mistake off the start, you're starting the race in the back of the pack, and you've got such a short amount of time to try to get through all the riders.
Yeah. Did you, after London, what was your mindset, and did you ever think about quitting?
No, I never thought about quitting. After London, I just was really kind of bummed out and just lost, is I guess the best way to put it. I felt as if, I was robbed of a chance, and then I was mad at myself, and I was trying to analyze like what I did wrong. But the thing with the Olympics that makes it really tough is It's not like you have another try next week, next month, or next year. You got to wait 4 years to even have a shot. And then it's not a guarantee that you even are going to get that shot. You have to make it all the way back to even qualifying for the Olympics, which is a task in and of itself. And then you have to go through all the qualification process of the rounds and the heat races and things like that to make the finals, just to kind of put yourself back in that position. So I was just trying to figure out, like, if I ever get back in that position, can I do it? Or am I just going to make this mistake again?
Sure. Now, okay, so you're there and you're in Rio. What's the different? How is Connor different in Rio than it was in London?
Well, I think there's how's Connor different, but then at the same time, I think you could say how's anybody different from age 23 to 19. I think there's a lot of growth, and I think it's at a quicker rate when you're younger. I mean, a 10-year-old to a 14-year-old is massively different, right?
Right.
A 52-year-old to a 56-year-old, not really going to be much difference happening at that point. So the younger you are, the more you're developing in those years. So for me to go from 19 to 23, I mean, I had moved out of my parents' house. I, was living on my own. I was financially stable. I mean, just as a human being outside of racing, I changed and grown a lot. But then as an athlete, I changed and grew a lot as well. And a lot of that was just from experience. I had 4 years of racing under my belt that I didn't have before. And with that comes wins, losses, and everything in between. And then also comes the knowledge of what you did well on the good days, what you did wrong, the bad days, and also 4 years of looking at what I had done wrong in London and trying to figure out how I could be ready if I ever got that opportunity again.
So how was, what did you change about what you did in London? In Rio versus London?
There wasn't anything I changed outside of just staying present and focusing on the process instead of getting too excited. Like, I didn't think about what place I got or what was going to happen. I was focused on each step, one step at a time. Instead of going to the end and trying to work backwards, I just remained focused on one step at a time.
Yeah. So you win the gold. Your father was there in Rio there, and how did that feel?
Yeah, it was cool. For me, the thing I always say, when I'm asked about winning the Olympics, is it was just the ultimate way to say thank you. I mean, everybody, especially my family, my parents and stuff, but my coaches, my teams, my sponsors, my supporters, my training partners, literally anybody who had been a part of this journey and put any effort into me, this was like the best way I could say thank you. And that it was all worth it. Look what we did. Look what we were a part of. So that was really cool. And then to see my dad, and the first thing he said was, "I'm so proud of you. You wrote it down on the wall and you made it come true." And it was cool. It was kind of a full circle story from, the first Olympics, and I watched it, to the next one where I didn't quite execute. I was close, and then I finally fixed the mistake and got it right. It was kind of a cool full circle story.
Yeah. So you win the Olympics. How does that change your life?
To be honest, externally, it doesn't really. I mean, we live in the United States, and if we were in a country that was different, so for example, the gentleman who won the Olympics from Latvia, he was the first ever gold medalist from that country. So he's got statues, he's well known, he's on pension for the rest of his life. When we're in the United States, I mean, we have, I think with the year I won, we won over 100 total medals, and 40 of them were gold. So I was just one of this massive number. So externally, life doesn't change that much, but I think internally for me, where it changed was I never doubted myself ever again. Like, I believed in myself that I could set this goal and go through everything that it took to get there and achieve it. And so I just have a quiet, I guess, confidence now that if I really want something, I've proved that I can go get it. And so that was kind of the biggest mindset shift for me. But it's not really anything external.
Okay. So after winning the gold, why did you continue to race? Why did you, set your marks on 2020 in Tokyo?
I mean, I was only 23 when I won, so I was kind of starting to enter physical prime. And I still loved to do it. I still enjoyed it. And I wasn't ready to move on to whatever the next chapter of life was going to be at that point in time. Average age for a BMXer to kind of move on from the sport is around 30. So I was still, in theory, kind of on the front end of the career at 23 years old. And so for me, it was like, I guess you could win and go out on top, and you never have to risk losing or being dethroned. But at the same time, it would have been really tough to watch the Olympics 4 years later, still physically 27 years old, in great shape, and knowing that you should be out there and you could win if you were out there. And I wasn't really thinking I could do that.
Yeah. So we'll fast forward to Tokyo, and you're in Tokyo during COVID, which it must have been bizarre being there and having no one in the stands.
Yeah, it was weird. There was no atmosphere. It just kind of felt like a normal practice day, but it just had all of the other competitors out there, and then everybody knew what was on the line. So it was just an odd experience to compete for sport's biggest prize in front of 50 people.
Yeah. I think that do you get any pickup from the crowd when there is one there, or when there was one there?
I mean, not when you're competing, but I would just say more the energy of the event, right? Like when you're getting ready, when you're warming up, when you're staging, when you're loading into the gate, when they're doing the introductions, like when everything's going on, when you finish, like when there's 15,000 people in the stands and the atmosphere is electric, like you can feel it.
Sure.
But when you can hear a coach on the other side of the arena go and cough, like that isn't an exciting, experience.
So you're in the semifinals in Tokyo, and you start. And do you remember anything now, or do you about your crash?
I have no memory of that day.
Of the whole day?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And could you just kind of go over what your injuries were? I know we talked about them in the opening statement, but tell me about your injuries and when you woke up in the hospital in Tokyo.
Yeah, so we had gone through the first two. There's a best of three semi. We'd gone through the first two, and then it was just a freak accident. I collided with another rider. I think he just misjudged kind of where we were on the track, and it wasn't, I don't believe, intentional. And I went kind of from 35 miles an hour, went straight into the ground head first. I didn't have time to brace. I didn't have any ability to kind of prepare for the impact. So I just smacked head first at 35 miles an hour. And I was knocked unconscious, and I was out for about 20 minutes. And as I was out, I stopped breathing. There's massive concern for my life. They had to create an airway to kind of make sure I was breathing again. From there, I was loaded into an ambulance where I was taken to a local hospital. However, remember, we're in the middle of COVID, so nobody can get to me. Nobody can get an update on me. Nobody has any idea what's happening. Last we saw, I was loaded into an ambulance with a breathing tube. And so, my parents back home, my fiance, my friends, my coaches, everybody's just trying to figure out what the heck's going on. So eventually, my brain stabilizes to the point where they are comfortable that I'm going to live. And then from there, they basically just put my phone by my bed, alerted my family that whenever he wakes up, he might reach out, but we have no idea what kind of condition he's going to be in. So 5 days later, I woke up and I was alone in a hospital bed in Japan, like super confused, covered in bandages, in a sling, like wondering what's going on. So basically, I had a traumatic brain injury. I had 4 different parts of my brain that were injured. I had multiple brain bleeds. I had brain shearing. I had an axonal injury, which means the brain rotated inside of the head. And it was just an absolute mess in there. I collapsed a lung, broke ribs, tore ligaments in my shoulder and bicep. But at that time, we didn't even know that I had torn ligaments because the concern was the head. And then I woke up and I kind of at least had memory. I knew who I was. I knew what was going on, but I had like 5 days kind of missing from memory. And then basically had to stay in Tokyo for a week until the doctors agreed that I could travel home. And then when I got released to fly home to the States, I went straight to a brain rehabilitation center to figure out what was going on, how my head was, what was injured, what was damaged, and I started rehab.
Yeah. So when did you put, I gathered that when you had your phone and you woke up in the hospital, you kind of Googled yourself or see what happened or whatever. Is that?
I mean, when I woke up, I knew I was in Tokyo. Like I remembered, the last thing I remembered was being at the Olympics. So I kind of deductive reasoning figured out that I must have crashed during the Olympics. But yeah, I turned my phone on. I have like hundreds of messages, hundreds of emails, hundreds of, my phone's just blown up. And the first thing you see if you open anything is pictures and videos of the crash. So I'm trying to piece it together to see what happened. And yeah.
Yeah. So the rehab, how long did it take you to get to the point where you felt like you were back to a relatively normal state?
I mean, it's tough to say when you say relatively normal state. I mean, I was never as bad as many people are when they have a head injury. I mean, I was in rehabilitation and I was watching people that were relearning how to walk. So there's always levels to how bad you are. For me, it was a 4-month process before I was released from rehabilitation. And initially it was just trying to find out where I was deficient, where my problems were, and then doing different things to address those deficiencies. I was able to seem and come off pretty normal within a few weeks, but I didn't feel normal. And if you actually tested me and pushed me, I was not normal. But I could trick somebody for 5 minutes into thinking that I was normal.
Yeah, I just reminds me, I had a concussion skiing. And we were up at the, from Las Vegas, you'll know, the Cal Neva up in Reno, right outside of Reno. It's on the border, it's around Lake Tahoe. And I had a concussion. And so I went and my wife said like, well, we can't do anything. And so I said, I'm getting bored. So she gave me $50 and said, you can go to the casino and gamble. And I remember the first hand that the dealer dealt, and it was a 10 and a 9. And I couldn't add 10 and 9. It was the wildest thing. I mean, I could not add 10 and 9. And I met him the night before and I tipped him pretty well. And he said, the calendar, this can't happen anymore in casinos. But he said, oh, don't worry, I'll play your hand for you. So I showed up back at the room with a few $100 extra.
There you go.
But yeah, no, when you from the outside, it just looked normal. But it took me about 3 or 4 weeks to get back to where I could add 10 and 9. Did your previous training, did that help in terms of rehab?
I don't know if it was the actual training in terms of like me doing squats and doing deadlifts and doing conditioning that helped. I think it was just more the mindset of what it takes to become the best in the world at something, and the commitment and the drive and the focus and the work ethic that it takes to get there, and then just reapplying that to something else. And I fully believe that could be anything you want. If I wanted to learn a language, if I wanted to learn how to, work on a car, if I apply the process that I used to try to become the Olympic gold medalist, I would get better and advance and improve at whatever it is I was trying to do. So it was more just the mindset and the process that I used in my training that I just translated to my rehabilitation.
Yeah. So you've decided not to ride competitively again. And can you tell a little bit about what was behind that decision?
I mean, at the end of the day, the first and biggest reason was that the doctors and the neurologists basically said, hey, if you hit your head again, like you're at significantly more risk now. Like you can't take another hit. This wasn't the first head injury that I'd had. I'd had a couple of other concussions in the past as well, one of which was pretty bad. So I don't want to put myself at any extra risk. And
sure.
I'm not going to go out and live in a bubble and live in bubble wrap, but BMX racing is not, it's not necessarily the safest activity you could do. And so I will ride, but racing is where it becomes dangerous. And then on top of that too, I'm 30. I already was kind of at the end of my career, and I was already beginning to kind of keep an eye on what's next and start thinking about life after racing. And Tokyo, I was always planning on being my final games. And, so you add the two together, that I was older, I was ready to move on anyway. And then I had the injury. It was just kind of a no-brainer. Yeah.
So now you do motivational speaking.
I mean, I actually started it before Tokyo. I was doing some after Rio, I was doing some. And, then I had to redo my story because obviously everything changed a little bit, but
sure.
I've been doing it for about 5 years now.
And how did you happen to get into that, and what made you decide to do that?
The NBC reporter for the 2016 Olympics was a speaker himself, and he spoke about all sorts of other different stuff unrelated to sport, but he had interviewed me a bunch for the Olympics and the press conferences and things. And afterwards, he said, hey, you're really well spoken, you're articulate. Have you ever thought about being a keynote speaker? And I'm 23 years old at the time. I said, what's a keynote speaker? I had no idea. And he said, oh, let me tell you about it and I'll show you about it. Let's get lunch when we get home. So I got home from the Olympics and he kind of explained it to me. And he said, hey, like, you've got a story here. If you can craft, what you used, what you did to achieve what you achieved, and be able to help others with it, it's fulfilling. It helps other people. It's motivating and inspiring to other people, and companies and businesses will bring you in to do that. And I thought it sounded like a lot of fun, and I like the thought. I didn't have to risk life and limb to do it. So I started getting into it at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's an amazing story you've had for a man who's just 30 years old. You certainly have lived a full life already. So kind of be curious to see what the next year's hold for you.
Hopefully less stress.
I don't know. It'll probably be a different kind of stress.
Yeah.
Maybe not less. But so Connor, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, where do they get a hold of you?
I have a website, connorfields.com, connorfields.com. All my social media is just my name, number 11, Connor Fields 11, and they can feel free to do that. Or if you just want to shoot me an email, it's connor@connorfields.com. Pretty easy.
Yeah, pretty easy. All right. Well, thank you for coming on oldguytalkstome.com, and I appreciate you sharing your story with me, folks. An interesting story here. Of success and then coming back from a traumatic injury. And I want you, as I say, I usually do, is I want you to do several things. I want you to share, rate, and review. And if you want to give me a bad review, that's fine too. As a matter of fact, if you want to be rabid and give me rabid bad reviews, I'll love you. I may even send you a t-shirt if you're like a troll, because I love my trolls very, very much. And remember, it's all about creating a kick-ass life for yourself and those that you love. Until next time.
Thank you for joining Dr. Orist and his incredible guest. Like what you heard and learned? Then be sure to do 3 things. 1, subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. 2, share this with someone who may need to hear it. 3, leave a review and rate this podcast. Opt in at www.thestandard.academy/magazine and get our free digital magazine with savings, articles, and deeper dives into cool controversy. Be the guy who takes action. Without action, you're not going to get the results you want. Thank you again, and make it a great day.